I had another long conversation with somebody recently who wanted to talk to me about the Great Filter. And we talked about, we wrestled with the idea of us being a fluke, one existence across the entire universe, or whether life
what a beautiful story.
Is life ubiquitous? Well, if we are the one, what a fucking bunch of idiots we are to ruin this.
Well, yeah, sure.
Because we get to see it. Right. Otherwise, it's just this huge, vast dead space that nobody ever knew existed.
I mean, don't you want to preserve this?
Absolutely.
I do. God. Okay. So
it's
keep
beautiful.
going.
And so we kind of just debated between us. Do we think? And you can probably help me with some of my questions, as somebody who does have more of a scientific background. I'm sometimes in the place where I think we're just a fluke because I don't understand the details of things like DNA and how you go from single cell life to multi-cell life, and I don't understand all these things. How can something be sparked to have something like a DNA? I don't understand all these things. It almost feels like design rather than a fluke.
Well, it's not almost design. I mean, this is hard because we've weaponized the term design.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like what I've called Jesus smuggling. I know that this is going to be a conversation about Jesus as soon as you say the word design. Right? We design. You know, my brother points out that a dachshund is a wolf that has been domesticated to have the form of a weasel. I think that they were used to hunt weasels in holes or something. Right? The fact is, we make designer dogs all the time. We are designing the dogs. We can design a mule by having a donkey and a horse procreate. That's intelligently designing a mule. So nature is always designing, in part when you have perception-mediated procreation. My brother has a term that I love, perception-mediated selection. Dinner in a movie is part of intelligent design. You know, somebody, what's your bank account look like? Well, what does your figure look like? You know, I mean, that's a very weird thing for two people to be asking each other, but that's what dinner and a movie are often about. And when we're doing that, we are engaged in intelligent design. We're trying to design our children. Now we design our crops. So there's part of this endogenous design that's present. Your question is about origins. We've never solved any of these things. Like, where does consciousness come from? Where did life begin? Probably the answers are really funny. You know, like, where did the bilipid layer originate in the cell to divide chaos from order? That may not be the question that motivates you, but maybe that's a beginning of meaningful life question, the one that would crack things open.
Well, it just seems that the origin of life, it seems the makeup of life, organic life, seems to be too complicated to have come from some spark in a primordial soup. It seems too complicated, and I just don't understand it.
If I can actually have a plea here, I think people have to recognize when they're engaged in recreation and when they're actually thinking about things, trying to make progress. Like, if we were to have a free will conversation, I would get so effing bored, you have no idea. Because it would never involve, like, I don't know, Hermitian operators and Hamiltonian symplectic geometry. It's going to be this thing about, I don't think free will actually exists, man. And then, you know, you'd say, I don't feel it. It does, you know, it has to exist because I choose. Those conversations to me are boring.
Well, that's not the conversation I want.
Okay.
I don't understand origination.
Yeah, but let's not ask that.
Okay.
Because we're not close to that question.
Therefore, for you, do you believe, I guess you believe that because you are considering these UFOs and consider what they are.
I'm considering the Pentagon. I've never seen anything that's compelling as a UFO. I haven't seen data. I'm looking at a world which it sounds like the dumbest, strangest, most moronic thing I've ever heard. And then the Pentagon puts this report out, and then I start talking to all sorts of people, and I realize I don't know how you would fake this. clearly we've lied. We were either lying when we concluded Project Blue Book, or we're lying now. So the question about conspiracy and lying is settled. We are clearly engaged in conspiracies, and we're clearly lying. What I don't know is if this is a psyop where we're trying to freak out Iran and Russia and China. I don't know whether... I don't know what we're looking at. Whatever we're looking at, we should be very concerned if the federal government is taking this seriously. And the reason, it's hard to even know how to talk about this stuff. If we have a hope of long-term survival, in my opinion, it's either because we figured out how to do something crazy, which I can't believe, like live in silicon, or, or we figured out how to diversify, right? I don't think we're going to become wise stewards of the world. Too many of us are too dumb with too much power. What we do have a hope for is potentially escape and diversification in the cosmos. If we can leave, others can visit. That's the key takeaway. Mm-hmm. So if you believe that humanity has a long-term future, you probably believe that Einsteinian speed limits aren't the last word, because you can visit the world through time dilation and things that we know about, but it's not really serious. If others can visit, are you telling me that the entire universe has chosen not to show up? Or are you telling me that life is so rare that, we're barely noticed? I don't know. But you should worry about visitors if you believe that humans survive long term. And that's a weird syllogism that I've never heard anyone else say. I'm not saying that nobody else says it. I'm just not aware of anyone who's put together that long-term human survival and the probability of alien visitation are probably linked.
Could it not be domestic visitation?
Well, it could be time travelers from the future, but
or could it be? I mean, you talk about investment and support for science and physics. Are you aware how much, say, China invests in this and supports this? Because
China's not very good at physics historically. Okay. So I believe that we're going to get our asses kicked, because in the period of time that we are not worrying about China, China's getting better and better, and they're throwing real money and inviting people over. But the world's great universities are still in the West, and Japan. I mean, Japan has great universities, but it's very hard to find great universities outside of the Western world. India's tertiary education and research institutes like TIFR are a counterexample. China has some things going on. I'm not really worried about the fact that the Chinese and the Russians and the Iranians have had, 12th generation craft from the 1940s and 50s. I think we actually just have to grow up and say we need to be worried about alien visitation. Okay. We need to be worried about it because if there is no alien visitation, it probably means we die on this planet fairly soon. And if there is alien visitation, we better figure out who's out there, because we're about to join a club that may think that we're not clubbable.